Hey guys, it's me Jack, and I'm back with another review. Dinosaurs. What can be said about them? They are the greatest creatures that ever lived, if you ask me. My childhood was dinosaurs. I knew all of their names, well, not all of them, but many of their names. I talked endlessly about them, and I watched a lot of movies featuring them. But when it comes to dinosaur movies, there is one movie and one movie series that stands out from all the others. And that series is, of course, Jurassic Park. For my next couple of videos, I will be taking a look at the Jurassic Park movies, with the exception of Fallen Kingdom, which I have already reviewed, so check that out. So without further ado, let's take a look at the original Jurassic Park. Based off of the Michael Crichton book of the same name, and directed by Steven Spielberg, Jurassic Park is about a billionaire named John Hammond, who uses amber to bring dinosaurs back from the dead, and decides to build a theme park featuring them, called Jurassic Park. For one weekend, he invites a group of people, including a paleontologist named Dr. Grant, and a chaotician named Dr. Malcolm, to see the park. But things go haywire when one of the employees double-crosses him and turns off the power, releasing the dinosaurs. Jurassic Park is a very interesting movie for a couple of reasons. The first one is pretty obvious. The movie pushed the boundaries of special effects. But another thing I find very, very intriguing is that it is extremely different from the novel with which it's based on. Oftentimes, when movies are different from their books, people get angry and hate them. But in the case of Jurassic Park, most people I know absolutely love this film, including the fans of the book. That in itself is quite an achievement. One thing about this movie that some people have criticized are the human characters. Some people argue that they're not really very interesting, and I respectfully disagree. Considering that a lot of monster movies have characters that you don't really care about, and you're just sort of waiting for them to die, this movie, I feel, does not have that at all. Dr. Grant, for example, is an interesting character who goes on a rather compelling journey. He himself is, for lack of a better term, a fossil, a relic of the past. He likes digging up bones the old school way, not using any of this technology crap. He also doesn't really like children. There's this great scene at the beginning of the movie that establishes that. This one kid calls the velociraptor just a 6-foot turkey, and Dr. Grant sets him straight, and also scars him for life at the same time. It does a good job of establishing two things. First of all, it sets up that Grant doesn't like kids, and second of all, it sets up what velociraptors are capable of, which comes back into play later. The way that he acts around John Hammond's grandchildren is hilarious. I always love the part where he shuts the door on Tim, and the kid just keeps on talking. Eventually, however, he is forced to look after the children, and he develops somewhat of a fatherly bond with them. By the end of the movie, it's clearly implied that Grant has finally learned to love these children. It's not the most complex arc, but it's still a pretty good one. The fan-favorite character of this movie is definitely Dr. Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum. And it's pretty easy to see why. Whenever he's on screen, he is a blast to watch. The way that he laughs and repeats the same words again and again, and says, constantly. The man is practically a legend. It's not surprising that he has all of the most iconic lines in the movie. My personal favorite character in the movie, however, would have to be John Hammond, played by the late Richard Attenborough. This, in my opinion, was the best change that they made from the novel to the movie. In the novel, John Hammond was a greedy, pompous asshole. He cared about money and pretty much nothing else. And he never learned from any of his mistakes. But in the movie, they made him actually really, really likable. And while his plans are ultimately misguided, his heart is nonetheless in the right place. As he explains in probably my favorite scene in the movie that doesn't involve dinosaurs, he wanted to show the people of the world something that was real, something that they could see and touch, something that wasn't an illusion. You do genuinely feel sorry for him. He does still have a little bit of a dark side to him though, as for a little bit, he thinks that he can just restart, but this time do it better. Despite this though, he quickly does come to his senses, and realizes that this park is just doomed. Ultimately, he redeems himself, unlike in the novel. In doing this, the filmmakers made him a much more interesting character. We already have a greedy human character in Dennis Nedry, so I don't think we really need another. The character of Donald Gennaro, the lawyer, is enjoyable enough, and his death scene where he gets eaten off the toilet is probably the best one in the movie. Dennis Nedry, played by Wayne Knight, is a lot of fun. He's enjoyably pathetic. Even though he is pretty much just a cartoon villain, they really do go all the way with that. Not only does Wayne Knight portray him like that, but they even add a banana peel sound effect when he slips. That is a great detail. I'll talk a little bit more about this in my future Jurassic Park reviews, but if you have a human antagonist and they don't really serve that much to the plot, then maybe you shouldn't have them in the movie at all. But Nedry works because he is the catalyst for everything, and once his purpose is served, they get rid of him. He doesn't show up in the climax for a final showdown with our heroes, because frankly, you don't need him there. You have dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are enough. You also have the kids, Tim and Lex. And I gotta say, as far as kid characters go, they're pretty good. Tim in particular reminds me a lot of myself when I was his age, in that he only ever really talks about dinosaurs. And they aren't just there to constantly be saved. Lex actually helps save the day at the very end of the movie, by using her computer skills to turn back on the power. Something else that I loved about this movie was the way that they cut down on the subplot about Tim and Lex's parents getting a divorce. It's only briefly mentioned once at the very beginning of the movie, but it does work in the subtext of the story. Dr. Grant becomes a sort of father figure to them. This idea is still there, but it doesn't hijack the story, like some other Jurassic Park sequels. There's also Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson is in this movie. That's awesome. Admittedly, this isn't Pulp Fiction Samuel L. Jackson, so he doesn't really get to cuss that much, but he does still have one of my favorite lines in the film. That line being, "Hold on to your butts." Of course, the real stars of the movie are the dinosaurs themselves. Now, compared to the other Jurassic Park movies, the amount of dinosaurs that you see in this movie is a lot more limited. The only real dinosaurs that we see are T-Rex, Velociraptor, Brachiosaurus, Gallimimus, Triceratops, Dilophosaurus, and very briefly, Parasaurolophus. Also, the amount of time that the dinosaurs are on screen is also a lot less in this film than in the sequels. But you know what? In a strange way, that kind of makes it better. I think there's such a thing as too much of a good thing. Dinosaurs are awesome, everybody knows it. But when you limit their screen time a lot more, it makes you appreciate whenever they are on screen all the more. Certain actors and actresses have their breakthrough movies, that movie that catapults them to worldwide fame. Well, this movie was very much just that, but not for any of the actors, for one of the dinosaurs. That dinosaur being Velociraptor. That's not to say that Velociraptor wasn't known by some people before this movie. But up until Jurassic Park, no big movie had featured Velociraptor as one of, if not the main dinosaur. But after Jurassic Park, you bet your ass that anyone who's anyone knew about Velociraptor. The way that they build up the Velociraptor in this movie is brilliant. The movie opens with a bunch of workers with a crate, with something inside of it. We don't know what. All we get are sound effects and brief glimpses of the creature's eyes. But we know that whatever it is, it's deadly, as it kills one of the workers. Later we have the scene where Dr. Grant tells the kid about the Velociraptor. Then we get our first real glimpse at the Velociraptor. However, here, it's just a baby. And by God, it's so adorable. But once you realize that it's a Velociraptor, we cut to seeing full-grown adult Velociraptors eating a cow. Again though, we don't really see them. We just hear the sounds that they make, as well as the sounds of the cow screaming in pain as they eat it alive. It isn't until the final act of the movie that we actually see the Velociraptors fully grown in the flesh. And much like the reveal of the creature from the Black Lagoon, what makes this reveal so great is that it's sudden. One of my best movie-going experiences was seeing this film in the theater, on a re-release with an audience, filled with some people who probably hadn't seen the film before, and seeing their reaction to when the Velociraptor comes out and scares Dr. Sadler. That was a movie theater moment to remember. The kitchen sequence with the Velociraptors, I think, is one of the best scenes of suspense in all of cinema. The raptors have a great presence to them, and the way that the scene just builds and builds is very heart-pounding. This also showed that just because a dinosaur is small does not mean it can't be a force to be reckoned with. Before this movie, you had the T-Rex, you had the Allosaurus, you had all these big carnivores. But this movie showed us that even the smaller carnivores can be just as deadly. I've heard some people complain about them being too big and not having any feathers and just not being scientifically accurate. These are movies about genetically engineered dinosaurs. Scientific accuracy isn't exactly the main priority here. As for the other dinosaurs in the movie, the Triceratops gets a nice scene, in which it seems that the dinosaur is sick because it ate some of the plants there, which were actually poisonous, adding to the idea that maybe bringing dinosaurs back wasn't a good idea, as we don't know 100% what they ate. There's a nice scene where our heroes get caught in a herd of Gallimimus, only to have the T-Rex come out and kill one of them. There's the Dilophosaurus, which again is not really scientifically accurate, as the movie has the Dilophosaurus being able to spit poison at its enemies, which they weren't actually able to do. But again, who cares? It's cool. I love the way the Dilophosaurus goes from being a cute, harmless, innocent creature to being a savage, monstrous predator. But of course, there is one dinosaur who I have not talked about yet, and that is because that dinosaur is the best one that ever lived. Don't argue with me, you know it's true. The T-Rex. The T-Rex was my everything as a child. Naturally, there have been many different interpretations of the T-Rex across the years, but in my opinion, and I don't think it's a very controversial one, the T-Rex in Jurassic Park is the greatest one of all. And in my opinion, the greatest movie monster of all time. Again, they don't just throw it at you instantly. They build up to the reveal. They go to the T-Rex paddock and it doesn't seem to be there. You, like the characters, are kind of disappointed. You want to see it. But then, when the power goes off, the glasses of water in the car start rippling, and out of the darkness comes the king of the dinosaurs himself. Sorry, let me say that again. The queen of the dinosaurs herself. The shot of the T-Rex breaking through the fence, genuinely one of the greatest CGI shots in all of cinema. Don't even get me started on that roar. In my opinion, the greatest sound effect in all of cinema. But let's not ignore the other amazing sound effects for the T-Rex as well, like its growling, which gives it a very ominous presence. The whole T-Rex introduction scene itself is one of my favorite scenes of all time. I've been saying that a lot in this video, haven't I? Well, it's Jurassic Park, so that's why. It's suspenseful, it's exciting, and while the T-Rex is genuinely terrifying, I can't help but root for her because she's just such a badass. A part of me is kind of disappointed when she doesn't eat everybody. Not because I don't like the characters, but come on, I mean, it's the T-Rex. She could eat me probably and I'd still be happy. Well, I wouldn't be happy, I would be dead. But I would have died happy, albeit in pain. Of course, the biggest reason why all the dinosaurs work so well is the special effects. The effects at the time were truly mind-blowing, and even by today's standards, they're still pretty damn good. Particularly the animatronics. I think part of it is because they're actually there. As great as CGI sometimes can be, there is usually just something about it that's a little bit off. But with animatronics, there is actually something there in front of you that you can touch. So it works even better. Granted, practical effects don't always work. I mean, just look at some of the old Godzilla movies. But nonetheless, these animatronics are incredible. They blend with the CGI very well, for the most part. Moments like when the T-Rex's foot comes down, or when Dr. Grant puts himself next to the Triceratops are especially good, and add to the realism of the creatures. The soundtrack by John Williams is iconic. Tell me that you don't hum that theme song to yourself when you're at a dinosaur museum. But another big reason I think as to why Jurassic Park has remained so popular over the years is because of the story and the themes. It may be very overly done, especially these days, but the story of man messing with science and paying the price for it never gets old to me. But the film has other themes besides just that. It also has themes about the over-reliance of technology. Considering that this film came out in the 90s, technology was really starting to take over. Not as much as today, but still. The way that John Hammond relies on all this technology to keep the dinosaurs contained. Ultimately, all it takes is one greedy asshole who knows a lot about computers, and boom, everything goes wrong. Now, as for my issues with Jurassic Park, they are very minor, but still worth mentioning. The movie features some hilariously unrealistic paleontology at the beginning of the movie. In real life, paleontology involves a lot of digging in order to find the fossils. But here, they just rub through a bunch of dirt and boom, there's a skeleton right there. Also, while most of the effects are still pretty damn good, there are a couple that are dated. The Brachiosaurus, which at the time was absolutely mind-blowing for a lot of people, nowadays does look a bit dodgy. I don't know, something about the skin texture just doesn't feel real. The Gallimimus sequence is kind of the same. Also, the way that the T-Rex comes in at the end and saves them from the raptors is kind of tacked on and convenient. Originally, the T-Rex wasn't actually supposed to show up here, but Spielberg changed it because the T-Rex was people's favorite dinosaur. It would have been nice if they had established that the T-Rex was nearby or something like that, and maybe have John Hammond lead her into the visitor center to save them from the raptors. But to be fair, that final shot where the T-Rex roars and the banner falls down is so awesome and so iconic that, honestly, I don't care! I'm gonna give Jurassic Park a 10 out of 10. Thanks for watching, and join me next time for my review of the divisive and controversial sequel, The Lost World.